Hegel once said, "Greek life is a youthful act." The one who started this life was Achilles. He was the ideal youth in poetry. The one who ended this life was Alexander. He was the ideal youth in reality. Those ideals in ancient Greek mythology became a reality in the empire of Alexander. A king holding absolute military power, personally tolled the death knell of the Olympic religion, based on the separatism of Greek polytheism, ended completely with the liberal city-state system. Alexander conquered the weak Greek world in the eastern countries. Yet he was like a shooting star across the night, gone in a flash. The foundation Alexander laid in the east, quickly divided up by his generals Ptolemy and Seleucus, almost completely partitioned, while the territory of Greece belonged to the Antigonid dynasty. Under the Macedonian kingdom, the democratic political ideals of small states and few people, under the despotism of the East, gradually declined. Wars were frequent, social unrest. People had no time to consider justice and reason. All that remained was the mutual slaughter of the ambitious. The Greeks once again faced their darkest hour. People curled up in the game of interests, and in the numb pleasure. People no longer pay attention to gods and country, glory and heroes, these grand propositions, but turned their focus back to themselves, with a negative and decadent attitude, to confront life. They also often mocked and ridiculed, to deconstruct all the nobility of life. Since then, philosophy fell into the narrow gate of ethics. It went from a torch seeking truth, to become a stretcher, to accommodate those who fled in the struggle for survival, such as cynicism, hedonism, skepticism, stoicism, and so on. These philosophical schools, like a bowl of Greek-style chicken soup, serving the worldly demands. It can be said that people at that time only had two choices. The first was extreme luxury living, indulging in extravagance and pleasure. The second was passive pessimism, pessimistically curled up in the shadows, seeking mystical liberation. When a society's distribution mechanism is revealed, the original balance continuously tilted towards the privileged and bureaucrats. In our real life, this binary choice will reappear. Any grand melody will degenerate into empty slogans. They will inevitably step down from the altar and become worshipped puppets, even shining like statues of the gods of Olympus. In that declining era, the Greek culture they symbolize is no longer revered by people. The body and spirit are inevitably divided and in dual opposition. When we look back at the Hellenistic era, superficially, Greek culture undoubtedly, following Alexander's eastern conquest, continuously infiltrated eastward. However, the eastern countries have long practiced despotism and bureaucracy. They adhere to the idea of the unity of ruler and God, or the ruler as a divine beast. This political system had a huge impact on Alexander. Soon, Alexander replaced the democratic politics and spirit of freedom of the Greek city-states with imperial absolute monarchy. Later Roman emperors also employed this unity of ruler and God as a ruling method. Furthermore, in later medieval Western European society, the idea of the ruler as a divine beast was prevalent. Furthermore, in the general way of life in society, for a long time, the class division in Eastern societies is very strict. Unlike the relatively restrained lifestyle in early ancient Greek city-states, it differs from the simple upper-class lifestyle. The Eastern upper class is more focused on utility and pleasure in life. Therefore, with the historical process of Hellenization, this hedonism has successively influenced two nations in history, the first being Greece. The second one is the Eastern society of Rome at that time. The lower-class people mostly lived a wretched life akin to pigs and dogs, seeking only food and warmth, with no ability to change their circumstances. In this context, people began to place their hopes in the afterlife, so in matters of religious belief. In the Hellenistic era, religious culture gradually began to show more otherworldliness as people moved away from the previous polytheistic beliefs. There was a general tendency towards a monotheistic belief, with people yearning for personal salvation. And with the divine revelation, they are willing to undergo penance to atone, hoping to receive God's salvation and enter into an eternal world. With the blending and unification of the Mediterranean cultural sphere, eventually formed the broad sense of Christianity in later generations. Christianity gradually unified the religious beliefs of the entire Western society in philosophy. People no longer pursue metaphysical propositions but turn to focus on practical happiness, joy, and moral ethics, so to speak. People in the Hellenistic era, like people today, lived in a postmodern cultural atmosphere. They had a more unrestrained view of money and consumption. The residences of the elite were filled with various exquisite and expensive artworks. However, their minds and souls were empty. The themes discussed by philosophers were no longer metaphysical. They stopped questioning the origin of the world. To appease these restless and agitated hearts, ancient Greek natural philosophy began to serve the exploration of the meaning of life from this perspective. Aristotle's metaphysical system became the final exclamation mark of ancient Greek philosophy. Follow me to take a popular look at our philosophical friends. See you next time. Subtitles provided by the Amara.org community.